everybody. Did we survive our first full day of the con all right? I hit the wall about 3 hours ago and all of a sudden found a surge of energy thanks to the press room coffee. So, yeah. So anyway, thank you for coming out tonight. I appreciate that. We are actually trying a new panel today. I know how many of you have seen one of our game or entertainment ones. We've been doing those for the last few years at Comic-Con, WonderCon, been doing game and movie panels for a while. I'm Garrett, the creator of Skewed Review. We're going to go down and introduce the panelists soon, but what we have today is tonight is something interactive. It's going to be just a little bit from us and a lot from you folks, because what we've decided is a brand new idea that I came up with. There's a lot of horror films that are being remade as either TV series, prequels, sequels, so on and so forth. And after I pitched all these other panels like the game ones, this one came to me and I said, wouldn't it be funny if we went down and said, these are the ones that we personally like to see some kind of new content from. So it could be prequel, sequel, whatever. And of course, when we get to the back end of it, there'll be a QR code up there for you to vote on the ones that you like, but there's also the area where you can submit your own, of course, when we get to the questions and answer part. So that gives you a little idea. So let's introduce everybody.
Hi, I'm Genevieve McBride. I'm the managing editor of Skewed Review. I'm normally not on the dais, but I agreed to play tech support today. If you've been to any of Garrett's panels before and you've heard any funny stories about his wife Jen, that would be me.
Hi, my name is Michael Newman. I've been with Skewed Review for over 10 years at this point. I'm part of the weekly podcast that we do. I also do a lot of reviews, movie reviews, game reviews, that sort of thing. So yeah, this is, I think, my second or third SDCC panel, WonderCon. We've obviously done also.
I'm Karen Newman, and I'm married to this cute cutes right here. So I pretty much just follow him around. He follows Garrett around, and I just go and do all the stuff that he does.
Victor Calderon, I'm a contributor with Skewed Review, and I also do assistant accounting on film and television. Work on American Horror Story and the recently Paradise season 1.
My name is Juliette Calderon, and I'm staff personnel for Skewed Review for the past couple of years, and I work at Disney, mainly on the streaming platforms, and I have past experience working at the studios for Warner Brothers as well.
Okay, so first up would be mine. So we had number one, Graduation Day. If any of you remember that classic cheesy film, which is available for streaming, that was the one about the track star who days before graduation was pushed too far by her coach and dropped dead at the finish line after winning a meet, and everybody started getting bumped off, and it was infamous for the corpse being displayed by the killer in a cap and gown and carried around, who still wanted to go through with the wedding plans, and it was just very famous for its cheesiness and 80s content, and I thought, you know what, that would be an interesting one to take a modern twist. Obviously, the next one, The Thing, that has been, I know it's a remake in and of itself. There was some talk about a new version that was based on a recently discovered series of chapters from the original source book, and that so far hasn't amounted to anything, but I would definitely love to see something more that way. Sleepaway Camp, for those of you who remember the most infamous twist in the world at the time in horror films, I thought that would be good. And if anybody sees number 2 or 3, Pamela Springsteen, who took over for the lead, is actually the cousin of Bruce Springsteen. They were related. I found that out a few years ago going, no kidding, that's actually one of his relatives. So that was an interesting one. So, you know, summer camp slasher film. Trick or Treat, I think we can all agree. Every year or two I keep hearing rumors, there's sequels, and it hasn't happened yet, but I thought that was definitely one of the more original. And then that number 5 was the tricky one. I had a list of candidates like crazy, and I went with the Funhouse. And that one was interesting. A bunch of kids go to the carnival, they get trapped in the funhouse. There's mutated psycho on the loose, so on and so forth. And you have all the little elements of, you know, the creature, the kids, all the 80s and 70s horror movie stereotypes, and of course, try to throw a little bit of humor in it. So those are mine.
Okay, so I went with the obscure route. A lot of these were 80s movies that were not well done in the first place, and I thought they could actually do with a remake and maybe make them a little bit more entertaining or interesting. Just to be sure, I did rewatch some of these recently, and I realized they are actually worse than I remember them being, which is usually not the case. Usually I can find something redeeming in them. But obviously The Shining, it's been redone as, you know, the Stanley Kubrick version, which notoriously Stephen King was not very pleased with. It was redone in kind of in a miniseries way with the guy from Wings. I'm trying to think of his name.
Weber, wasn't it?
It was Weber, yeah. Which I liked. I thought that version was better than the Stanley Kubrick version. It's interesting. That one's really hard to find streaming anywhere else. But I thought it was a little bit more true to the novel. So obviously, I think that's one, with Dr. Sleep having come out several years ago at this point, it would probably be something that might be worth revisiting The Shining again, just to kind of to touch base on that. Life Force, which is one that I just rewatched because it's been a long time. The premise being space vampires, essentially, that come to Earth and take over the Earth. It's a very unique twist on the vampire story, and a very horrible execution. I would not recommend watching it if you haven't seen it already. I probably make it sound more interesting than it is. But it is streaming on Tubi for anybody who wants to watch it for free, which is probably the only way I would recommend watching that movie. But again, I do think there is an idea there, an interesting idea about coming across a spaceship that is derelict, that has vampires on board that are brought back to Earth, thinking that they're dead, only to realize that they're undead, and then chaos ensues. So I think the idea is there. I just don't think the execution was there. But it would be interesting to see what can be done this day and age. The next one up, I'm trying to see what that is from. Night of the Comet. Again, another classic 80s zombie movie. Again, another take. You'll kind of notice the takes on these, a lot of these are space-based ones. The idea being that Halley's Comet, which ironically is in Life Force as well. Big theme in the 80s, apparently. Halley's Comet comes and vaporizes half of the population, and the other half are turned into zombies, except for a couple of people that were in a movie theater who survived, and goes from there. Again, another interesting premise that I'm surprised they haven't redone at this point, but something there. Night Flyers, for those who are not familiar, it was based on a short story by George R.R. Martin. Essentially, it's about a group of scientists, I guess, that are traveling in space to meet up with an alien race to ask them some questions, get to know more about them. And then a lot of the people who are on board mysteriously, they start dying off in horribly horrific ways. The book, significantly better, I think, than the way it was done. Ironically, George R.R. Martin was responsible for the screenplay of the original, which is surprising because it doesn't really follow the novel or the short story, I guess, very closely. Again, with Game of Thrones being kind of a very key component to his writing, obviously his name would draw something. It would be an interesting take to see if they can make that a little bit better, given the technology and of course the premise. I think is still interesting. The short story is pretty good, so it'd be interesting to see that take. Something Wicked This Way Comes, a novel that many of us in the 80s had to read for English class and maybe even earlier. Actually, it's a fantastic book. I would definitely recommend reading the book. I thought the movie they did on it was was okay for the time. But again, another type of movie that, while not traditionally a horror sense, has a very creepy premise to it, where carnival rolls into town and bad things start happening. Very similar to how it kind of comes around. So I think again, another opportunity for something that hasn't been done recently to maybe get another shake.
Okay, so I have a couple of controversial ones that I didn't even want to put on here, but I had to. It's because the remakes that they did do were so awful that I want another shot at them. So the two I'm going to talk about kind of in more Poltergeist than the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because the Texas Chainsaw is not one of my favorites, but Poltergeist absolutely is, and I was so disappointed in the 2015 remake of it that I want another shot at it. However, I do understand that Poltergeist is a absolute classic masterpiece on its own. So I don't want anybody to touch it at all, but we gotta redeem that 2015 thing. And same with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I mean, the original is kind of everything, and all of these, I don't even know how many remakes and shenanigans that they pulled with that. I wouldn't mind seeing an actual good remake of it. And then kind of with the Event Horizon and Your Next, I'm going to kind of lump those together, even though they're two completely different movies. I just want to see what more, mostly for Event Horizon, more a modern take on it, because it is so spacey, and it was done quite a while ago. I think with all of the new technology and everything, I think it could be really, really done really, really well. And then Your Next, I absolutely loved, and I wouldn't mind seeing a sequel, just something more, because it was just so good, and once again, it was another unique movie. And then the one I want to talk about the most is The Twilight Zone, because I'm absolutely obsessed with The Twilight Zone, but I like the original Twilight Zone, the show, and I absolutely, as a kid, loved the movie as well. But I would love to see a Twilight Zone movie more based on the kind of the genius and not so farciness of the movie, although I loved it. I want to see like the genius of the original Rod Serling, a movie based on those, because those are just every New Year's weekend, or New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, and then 4th of July, I just had it too. They have those marathons, and that's like my whole existence those times. So I was like, hey, we were just going through what movies we want to pick, and I'm like, that's it. I want Twilight Zone. I want a movie, a really, really good Twilight Zone movie.
Oh, my probably controversial.
Oh, you did have some up there. I was like, what is he doing?
Well, with Leprechaun, I looked into it. Warwick Davis stepped away when he had kids, and he wanted to step away from a little bit serious tone movies, even though they were pretty wacky by the time he got to Leprechaun in the Hood. They're getting older now, even with like A Nightmare on Elm Street. They're getting older now, and we haven't gotten a true send-off for those people doing those things. Robert Englund, after Freddy vs. Jason, already said he didn't want to do it anymore. And I look at it like, can he entice him back doing a new movie, but do it like Terminator? Have a new person doing the body and letting him come back, do the face, do the voice, just to have him back for one more. Was From Dusk Till Dawn. I really like Sinners, and I know like From Dusk Till Dawn was a really great movie. I know that Robert Rodriguez has been sequelizing, remaking, doing everything with his movies with his kids, so maybe this could be one they could touch. Hopefully, I know Spike hasn't really been doing that great. American Werewolf in London. I know we have London, we have Paris. If there's a new place we can get to, I've recently traveled to Europe, so it's there's other places we can go to that we haven't gone. But maybe we could get a sequel to that one. We haven't had a good werewolf movie. They're bringing back Frankenstein, The Invisible Man. Vampires are coming back. Zombies have never left since The Walking Dead came back. So I think like a good werewolf movie. And the most recent Wolfman movie was really good. It was a great movie. So I think like an American Werewolf in London or another touristy area would be a great movie to see. And with The Fly, the reason why I chose this one was because watching The Substance and that body horror that person would probably do a really great version of that movie. And I would like to see Coraline Fairgap do that. That's the only person I would love to see do a fire pick is that person because of what she accomplished and the substance.
Okay, so I chose these 5 movies mainly because one, Big Fan of the Stepford Wives. I did see the Nicole Kidman version before I saw the 1975 version. However, I did like the ending to the original more than I did, I'm all for girl power, oh, we fight back, we got it, but I loved the horror ending that came here, and that it wasn't a happy ending. So, if I could, I would probably do another Stepford Wives, but I would do it a la, we got a couple of vibes from Don't Worry Darling, in that kind of picturesque environment. You have someone who becomes aware, the center of the story is still there. But I would try to add a little more Ready or Not to it, and if I could, maybe not even make it into a movie, maybe make it into a limited release series, and maybe emphasize a little more on the gore aspect of the women who are getting, who are disappearing from town, kind of show a little bit more of that, more towards 1975 version, a little less away from the Nicole Kidman. Next one was Jaws. So, I mean, it's a classic movie, it's great, but I think kind of the trend that we're seeing with some remakes is not always to make it better, but sometimes to see someone's vision with it. And I think with the right director, of course, like I said, classic, but with a new director who has a different vision for it, just seeing more creativity in the artistic way that they shot it. I love the old nostalgia feel, but we have a lot more movies that are aiming towards making it more of a horror movie. Yes, some of the killing scenes are absolutely great because they don't show the nitty-gritty of someone getting completely torn to shreds. But I would like to lean it more into that too. So my biggest critique is always going to be make it a little more gory. You're not going to, throw some extra blood in there, some extra buckets. We've come a long way since what we had back in the 80s. Hostel, I only feel about Hostel just because of the type of climate that we're in. There are tons of protests out in Spain right now. I would love to see it get taken to a level, but maybe when it dials down a little bit more as Scared. But I just think the relevancy of it to the climate that we're in would be great to see, so long as it's done with a little tact in that sense. So the burning, I don't know I didn't like it at all, but I know it's one of those that at the time of its release, it was a huge hit, and I respect that, but it was just, I can't really put my finger on it. When I watched it, it was really tough. I had to rewatch it maybe 3 or 4 times because I kept just turning it off and walking away. But I think the core of the story being there, it gives a lot of the same energy that we get from other campsite movies, but I would love to see it done in a remake version of Fear Street that we saw come out of Netflix, something more towards that. I think the artistic versions would be the best way to remake these films. More blood, more killing, and more artistic creativity, in my opinion, please. And then with Pumpkinhead, I mean, I love a creature film as much as the next person. You do have, a good contest with Trick or Treat in that sense of pumpkin. But there's tons of Halloween movies, Halloween type movies. Of course, it's going to be the scariest game of the year. But at the same time, there were 4 movies for Pumpkinhead. I don't know if maybe a remake needs to be redone, but if it were to be redone, maybe just centralize that all into one film instead of just dragging it on. Because once it becomes too many remakes, you lose sight of the story, you lose sight of kind of caring about the character, and that's when interest starts to kind of die off.
Okay, so that is our setup. So now what we'll have you do is you obviously come up. We'll be happy to take questions and comments. but at any time you have the option to go ahead and click this. You can hit the button for which one you want to see remade. And of course, there's the little area on there where you can put in your suggestions. Obviously, there were a lot. When we started kicking around these panels, we were coming up with so many, and it got to be tricky because some of them you're like, well, they're, you know, one of them was suggested and we found out they had just finished filming a remake, or, you know, there's a TV series coming. There was, you know, I'll be honest, Event Horizon was a little tricky because we found out that there's a prequel comic book series after no action on the announced Prime Video series. But we looked at that and said, well, that's a comic. That's not it's not the film version. We're all still waiting for a film version. So there is a lot of stuff out there, especially when you get into the hack and slash films, and it seems like every week that, hey, this one's being considered and this one's being considered, and I kind of had to draw the line at, unless there's casting or the cameras are rolling, then, you know, it's fair game. So, ready to take on some questions. I'm very anxious to see yours. I did want to point out Michael's Life Force thing. There is, I guess, depending on what your level of interest is, it does feature a pre-Jean-Luc Picard, Patrick Stewart, but I think obviously making it family appropriate. The main reason anyone watched it essentially was for the leading actress who spends probably 90% of the movie
I will say
saving the wardrobe budget. So
I will say though, I think it might be Jean-Luc Picard. Patrick Stewart's first male-on-male kiss on screen.
Yeah, that's true.
So
yeah.
yeah, like I said, don't.
And
Don't pay to see it.
Texas
I don't
Chainsaw.
know if you should watch it. I was watching it mainly for educational purposes, and that might be even a little bit too long.
Texas Chainsaw, the film rights are up for grabs right now, so that, you know, that's part of it. But then again, they had their chances while they weren't up for grabs to make a new one. And the last one we got was that the Netflix one was that 5 years ago now?
Yeah.
The only good part was the self-driving car finale, but yeah, that's me. Okay, so definitely interested to hear what your thoughts are. So
there are some that we have had some activity in the poll, and the top three right now, tied for the top.
Life Force number one, right?
A Nightmare on Elm Street, Poltergeist, and then there's a tie between Twilight Zone and You're Next.
All of you.
I got the inspiration for Nightmare on Elm Street watching that trailer for the Black Phone 2. It gave me a little bit of like Nightmare on Elm Street when I watched it.
all right, so we have a question.
Not so much of a question, but just a couple of suggestions. Tombs of the Blind Dead.
That's going back. That is.
Well, I mean, zombie ghostly nights back from the dead that terrify innocent civilians. What could go wrong with that?
That's not a bad idea at all.
And the obvious suggestion, which everybody should have thought of, is bring back the Brendan Fraser mummy movies.
That's the only reason I didn't mention that is they had just wrapped about 2 weeks ago. They wrapped filming on the latest Mummy movie, and it's done by. I'm hoping I'm saying his name right. Lee Cronin, who was the one who did the most recent Evil Dead film, and then there's apparently another Evil Dead film about to go into pre-production, but not with Raimi. So that we actually had the Mummy on the list, and then literally I had it on the list, and the email came through going, Lee Cronin has just wrapped filming on the new version of the Mummy. I'm like, that's great, off the list it goes. So. But yeah, that's. I mean, I was getting obscure. I was looking at some of my old Air Force Day, desperate to rent anything. I mean, I had like Rawhead Rex, the Microwave Massacre, the Nail Gun. I mean, I was like going as obscure. Remember the stuff, the one about the dessert food that was actually living? I was like looking at that going, It's a very dark path you don't want to go down because once you start, you can go A, there's a lot of movies out there, and B, I have watched way too many bad movies in my life.
Well, there's one that we didn't think about.
What's that?
The Blob.
Of course.
And again, yes, that was redone, 20 years ago.
Late 80s, early 90s?
Yeah, that's the last one.
That's another one of those that every few years you hear this, hey, so-and-so's pitched a remake of The Blob, and I'm like, all right, believe it, my films.
So there are some suggestions here.
Oh, yeah, we like suggestions.
The first one, and see, I'm not a horror connoisseur like these guys here. I do go to the movie Screeners with Jared,
Like that. Well,
and this is, yeah, that's exactly what it is. Anything that's scary. The last one was,
I know what you did last summer, and I
they
giggle
spent
like
most
a
of the movie
banshee
just
during
staring
all
at
of
Jared.
it.
But someone suggested The Burbs.
I like it.
Herbs is a good one.
Burbs is a TV show now. I don't know if it was in Dallas, but I happened to be on the lot, and I thought I saw stuff for it.
Yeah, that was another one of those
I've
announced
heard
and talked
something.
about. Yeah.
I've heard rumors. I didn't know if there was any official.
To be clear, he did not break any NDAs.
I don't work on
What else do we have?
The Babadook.
Oh.
Oh.
yeah.
Love them.
Again, another one that the original is so
good.
good, it's hard to imagine redoing that.
Yeah, that was good, but yeah, that would be good to
If
see.
anybody has not seen a film, highly recommend that.
Phantasm.
Oh.
Oh, Phantasm. That would be a good one.
Yeah.
The Exorcist.
Oh.
So my question is, like, when we talk about, like, Angela and, sleepaway camp, with the way that kind of politics has changed, what do you think about that?
That's just a really good question. I just remember seeing that, not having any idea. In the 80s, I swear it was like at a sleepover birthday party or something like that. And seeing it, I know at a sleepaway, no. But at the time in the 80s, it was shocking. And that's a good point. Having it redone now, I don't know that that would be something that's as shocking or, like a big twist. They would almost have to put a different spin on it, but then would it be sleepaway camp? That's a really good question. I don't even know. I'm with you. I think that was, because and he even goes, what is sleepaway camp? And you're going through the list. Yeah, and I was like, oh my gosh. But you're right, now would be like, so that's a really good question.
With like political climates and stuff like that, you'll see, like I had to look it up, like during the Reagan era, you had Nightmare on Elm Street, you had Friday the 13th, a lot of like stuff that attacked families, stuff that did that. So a lot of the values we see now are probably what's getting put into horror movies. Like after 9/11, that's when we got torture porn, we got Saw, Hostel, and all those movies started coming up. So it's a little tweaking, but probably see a lot more slasher movies.
But it's that age-old saying about movies and pop culture. It reflects the times that they're made in. So you would find if somebody were to do a remake, then obviously taking a side or showing a different light on things. But whether it's obviously wrong or right. But I think one of the biggest things about horror movies, comedies, anything that has any type of goal to make either you laugh, make you sad, make you fearful. They're going to go within it, and it could also not be a political statement about anything happening. It could be they had that idea 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, or they've been trying to get this one pitch done their whole life, and they finally got enough clout to do it. That can also be it too.
Just a comment on Sleepaway Camp, because that reminded me. Pamela Springsteen is actually Bruce's little sister.
Sister. Okay. I knew they were related. I thought it was cousin, but thank you.
Yeah, well, I'm from Philly, so.
And how could you not like the Matthew McConaughey, Renelle Zellweger, Texas Chainsaw?
Because I despise Matthew McConaughey. all I'm gonna say on that one. I
The movie I'd really like to see them redo is Night Breed.
Yes.
Because they
Good old
really
Clyde
did
Barker.
it right.
Yeah, that.
That's on the list. That's your suggestion.
oh, was it?
Nightbreed, that is definitely a great idea. I mean, hey, Hellraisers, they did the Hulu reboot a few years ago. They just announced 2 days ago there's a video game coming, so maybe we'll see some action in Clyde Barker's world soon.
Maybe just slow down on Hellraiser.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
There was a William Castle cycle in the early aughts that didn't really appeal to me, but I'm still holding out for the Tingler, which I had heard announced.
That is a great idea. Let's get those classic 50s movies back and, redo them. Although, I also remember though what they tried at the day the Earth stood still, so there are certain things, and I remember James Cameron had apparently, they were all set to redo is it Forbidden Planet? I always get Forbidden and Fantastic. I know them in my head, but then they leaked the script, and that basically threw it. I'm trying to remember, wasn't it Straczynski's script at Babylon 5? I think it's something like 80% of the script was leaked, or either way, the script got out, and they basically said no point in rewriting it and going because the whole unique pitch was taken. But boy, that Tingler would be a great idea. Any of you ever hear about that one? That was the one where they put the little electric shocks around and there was apparently a bit in the film when they were like, watch out, it's loose, and they randomly shocked the seats because people thought the Tingler was actually loose in the theater. That'd be great. It's funny, I love what you said about Sleepaway Camp because I actually had that discussion with my son, and he was like, I like these slasher films, but I don't like all the nudity in them. And what were you saying? I basically took a look at him and I'm like, okay, that's not a standpoint that his mother, and I definitely had, and I said, son, you gotta remember, there was a formula for horror films of this type from the 70s to the 80s into the early 90s. And I said, and I get times change. I'm not saying we need to go back to that, but it was always, we're gonna have some gratuitous, we're gonna have a lot of this, we're gonna have this. The movies have evolved, obviously. Now we're getting far more graphic violence, but they've toned down the other stuff. And I said, and that's great. The problem is, some of these things, that was always a central part of the story. The people who did these activities never lasted till the end. And now you have this whole thing of, you have far more people surviving these horror films. So they moved away from the final girl to final girl and her boyfriend and her best friend and so on and so forth. And while that's interesting, because you used to be able to say, well, that's the one that's going to live, it makes adapting some of these older films, like, anyone remember The Stepfather? Yeah. And when they tried to reboot it, and I don't mean the third one, when Terry didn't come back, the full reboot, they had to completely, change up several aspects of the film, and that just didn't work.
There's still a couple of suggestions on this list that I'm familiar with this stuff.
Yeah, I mentioned that one briefly. That's a good one.
Night of the Creeps.
Oh, yes. Yes. You guys all remember that one?
I don't remember that one.
Yeah, it was, let's see if I got this one right. It was like these little slugs, and it was like a parasitic zombie invasion, and it hit a college campus. It was, right before homecoming, if I remember right? And there's the classic line of like the security guard going, your dates are here. Unfortunately, bad news is they're all dead. And so, yeah, that would,
So is Slither a take on that?
yeah, in some ways, and maybe if you really wanted to go, like Peter Jackson's Devil Life, which, the Kung Fu priest taking on zombies in the graveyard is still one of my favorite moments in horror history.
Yeah, I just had two comments. One was after we'd taken the poll, my roommate wrote to me, and she emphatically wanted to add a movie called Eyes Without a Face.
Oh,
I know the song.
And the simple fact that, yeah, we have so much better, CGI.
Which is true for a lot of the ones, particularly that were very effects heavy during the 80s, where they made it worse by trying to appeal to that, which they could much better do now, for sure.
And one was a response to what he was just saying about the formula in the horror movies. I lived overseas for a good part of my life, and they had a very different take on the way they presented the balance between the sex and the violence. And I remember one particular time I was watching Basic Instinct, and they had these scenes where they just had hours and hours, basically, it seemed like, of sex, really graphic sex. And then when it came to the time, I never even knew what happened to the main characters because they never showed any of the killing. And so I was so confused about what was going on. They showed 20 minutes of sex and no killing at all. Yeah, I just want to add that, the different balances. But yeah, I know what you're talking about formulas.
I got one for you all. How many of you remember The Incredible Melting Man? Rick Baker won an Oscar for it. I remember my parents taking me to see it at the drive-in. Gave me nightmares. Now, horror doesn't bug me now. And I remember watching it in my early 20s, again, going, oh, I can't believe this bothered me. And then a few years later, there's Mystery Science Theater ripping it to pieces. And I think that was like full evolution from nightmare to, wow, I can't believe this thing. But with the digital effects now, and as you mentioned, the body horror, that could be a very interesting, path to take right now.
I like my wacky horror movies. One that I thought would be great, but we can't do it now because I don't know who would do it. Would be Ernest Scared Stupid. That would be like people said John Cena, like he'd be perfect at that movie. But how many movies do we get with him until we get tired of it? Like they did with Kevin Hart and all these other actors who do. You see him everywhere. Kate Pascal now, get used to that point where someone's eating one.
So, Karen, I have one for you. The Twilight Zone. Now, when we have the Twilight Zone movie, obviously we remember the Vic Morrow tragedy that shortened the one segment. They have the classic William Shatner remake with John Lithgow. Which of the classic Twilight Zone episodes would you love to see them remake in an anthology?
Anyway, okay, I absolutely love that. Why can I not remember? Well, the one where they're in the diner and they're the Martian and the Venus.
Real Martian, please stand up.
I know, and I just watched it like 17 times and I couldn't remember. Yes, that would be just amazing to see. And I don't know why I love this so much, but the Hitchhiker one, it freaks me out every time, and I make him watch it with me because I will not watch that one by myself, and how he's all like back there and she's like wondering what's happening. I love that one. And then what are the other one? It's just more of a personal thing, but I think the gambling one is so funny when the slot machine's going after that crabby guy and he's like, that's just stupid, why don't you throw it in the trash? And it's mostly because I absolutely love to gamble, and every time I make him take me to the casino, he's like, why don't you just throw the money in the trash, it'd be cheaper. And I'm like, you're the guy on the gambling thing. But then he's all in there, hitting the friggin' video poker just as much as I am, so I'm like, whatever. So that would be more of a funny one, but I really truly do want to see more of the really, really good classic ones, like the really real, hello, Talking Tina. Because I'm a doll person, I'm obsessed with dolls. I even bought the Entertainment Earth Talking Tina replica. That would be a really good one to see. There's just so many, and then the one, for some reason, I've never seen, the How to Serve Man. The To Serve Man, yeah. And I was like, how have I never seen this one? He's like, oh yeah, we watch it all the time. Those, that are like classic, that haven't been redone, like the William Shatner with the airplane, which is wonderful, but
I thought I Shot an Arrow in the Air and Where Is Everybody? Those are two that really stuck with me over the years. But those, there were so many of them. It's like they all stick with you. But
that's what I'm saying. There are so many of them, and if it's done well, it would just be really cool to see. Not the farce, although, like I keep saying, I love the Twilight Zone movie from the 80s because it was so goofy. If it's done like really well, I think it could be really good.
And it's going to be interesting too, because you have all kinds of, you know the main reason why we get so many horror films is that they are considered cheap and very easy to produce. And that's why they do them, because you're almost always guaranteed a profit. And what I'm really curious about, have you heard about what's happening with Saw? So they were all set to do another Saw film after the huge success of the last two films, and it kind of fell apart over disagreement, shall we say. Well, all of a sudden the film rights ended up with Blumhouse and Atomic Monster, which is run by James Wan, who was one of the co-creators of the series. So essentially, the creators now have input and control back over the franchise. And they had told me years ago, I was lucky enough to interview them right after the first film, and occasionally James will pop on Facebook, respond to something. And he had said that, we had never intended the Saw films to go in the direction that they did. We kind of stepped away after the first film, but they kept us on as producers. And, it'd be interesting to see what he's going to do.
Hello, hope you guys are enjoying Comic-Con. Two movies I forgot to mention, The Reanimator and the movie Dolls. I don't know if you guys have ever watched it. I know that as a kid, my parents kind of left that VCR at the bottom shelf. Of course, it was in reach, and that movie gave me nightmares, and to this day, I hate blinking dolls. So, I guess my question for you would be, how would you imagine them redoing both of those movies? Because they are so good, especially in the context that they are in. Like, I don't see a way for them to actually redo them without screwing the movie up.
Right. Wow, that is a great one. That took so Dolls and Reanimator. Well, Dolls, I think the Child's Play movies have kind of given us and maybe not the new one, but the first Megan film, has given us a little bit of a template, CGI, go to town. Reanimator would be a tough one. I mean, that mad scientist, I almost debated telling you this, but somebody like a month ago said they're actually kicking around Frankenhooker and redoing, and I'm like, I can't see any studio financing that. That would have to be an independent. But it made me think about Reanimator, which occasionally has popped up. It would have to be like a Frankenstein thing, but I don't know if you could stop it ahead this time. What do you think?
I'm with you. I don't know that they could redo Reanimator.
But with the effects, if they had any kind of budget with the CGI effects, you could have some real fun with that, because you wouldn't be stuck with a head in a tray that we all know was someone, sticking their head up.
Sticking their head through a hole in the tray.
I can tell you at least on the studio side that it's really difficult to get horror movies made nowadays that require big budget movies. Like Garrett said earlier, they are known for being low budget and high thrills. That's kind of the template that you try to go for. It hasn't been until recently that you have a studio like A24 come out of the woodwork and prove that horror can be cinema. And that has always been a really long fight for a lot of companies like Warner Brothers. They finance their own films, but they also head over and like cinema. So they're chugging out a couple of movies each year, but that's because they do a lot of really good back research on how many bucks they think they can come in the scenes, if they can get tax incentives back on it depending on where they film. There's a lot that goes into it. So if you have the added layer of controversy, maybe not this political light, it gets even more difficult. So there is a possibility that, well, yes, in the right context it can be done, the slimmer the chance it gets is simply just because there's a lot of factors at play. But that's one of the bigger overlying factors of horror movies is that a lot of them originally came up because there's so much more to be afraid of in life than there is to be excited about for a lot of people. But that's kind of the whole point of movies, isn't it? So you feel that horror, but then it makes you appreciate all the good things that happen to you later.
The two movies I'm about to mention aren't necessarily related to Dolls or Reanimator, but I think when it comes to remaking older films, it's gonna be on the movie, the talks about the movie that's going to be coming out, can't remake certain dates. They actually remade Street Trash, and they remade Return of the Dead. So I think, depending on how those movies turn out, you'll see how far they'll go back or how obscure they're going to want to go.
So apparently we have a few more entries to the list.
Tremors.
Yeah. I think
That one I actually did watch. Rubber.
Okay.
Rubber. I'm familiar with that. Rubber.
It's a killer tire.
Yeah. It's like Attack of the Killer Tomatoes gone bad. It's a tire. And the tire head just rolls along, taking out everything.
And the Mouse of Madness.
Yes.
The Monster Squad.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Someone said this Exorcist should be a TV show.
Right.
Needful Things. It Follows. And Teeth.
Yeah.
That's a different.
You know, nobody's brought up the Halloween series?
No one's brought up that? Oh my god, goodness.
I thought about the Halloween, but I didn't want to add to the list.
Wolfen.
So.
Yeah, remember that one?
I liked Wolfen.
Cat people. I mean,
But see, Wolfen, if they redid it.
Yeah, that's true.
The idea is that
Really,
Wolfen was really good.
you had a really good point, is that we do have all the zombies, we have the vampires, we have all that, but we don't have any wolf movies. Like, once again, a good wolf thing, because that would be good.
Twilight really killed the vampire.
You know, that's very true.
Have you
Twilight
ever
had a
Teeth?
scary version of it.
Oh.
What was Teeth about?
I
Oh
know.
boy.
You know the one where the stars or something?
And I was like, what is teeth? What is happening? I don't know.
I'll tell you about that one later. I don't know if I don't know how I could describe that in a family-friendly setting. No matter.
Oh.
Think body parts.
Thank you. Yes.
Oh my goodness
One of the
gracious.
things I thought was,
Yeah. Oh, down. Guess what we won't be watching at our house.
one of the things I thought about was, why do we have to remake the original one? Like, somebody brought up Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, why don't we remake that one? Why don't we start with Nightmare on Elm Street Dream Warriors? Like, we don't have to go back to the original
What a
one.
good idea. Take one of the good ones instead. Yeah. That's a great idea, Victor. Jason Takes Manhattan. Have you seen the splice that's going around where they splice Jason kicking in the door and there's Sam Jackson doing his very X-rated "Who the blank are you, blanky blank?" And I'm like, I could watch that movie.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind to see Dream Warriors.
Last question.
Alright, well, first, for Hostels remake, Airbnb.
Yes.
And for why, that would be so awesome, like that scene with the nail coming off.
Wow.
But I had a suggestion of a horror twist on Inception, because that way the creativity would be all over the place. You could do all these horror ones that everyone's talking about, like going to people that were traumatized as a separate little horror thing in there, right?
That is a brilliant
That
idea.
is a really good
We should
idea.
pitch that.
Dreamscape.
I don't know.
It's all gonna be on there.
But yeah, that'd be really cool because you could track out, like, I feel like you could tease a lot of movies that were up on that list, you know? Be like, how would that fare as an actual little horror movie?
Great idea. Well, that is it for our time tonight. We'll appreciate you all coming out. I hope everyone has a good rest of the night and get rested up and ready for the next couple of days. Thank you.